You may be seated, and thank you to Troy High School's JROTC and to Tim Kepler for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem. I'd like to begin this morning by welcoming some special guests, beginning with Dr. Jim Kavanaugh, the chairman of the board of the Richard Nixon Foundation, Christopher Nixon Cox, a member of the board of directors and President Mrs. Nixon's eldest grandson, Sandy Quinn, member of the board of directors and my predecessor as the foundation's president and CEO, and also would like to welcome Ambassador Gadi Vasquez, the former ambassador to the UN World Food Program in Rome and former director of the Peace Corps. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Ambassador. Also, welcome to more than 200 friends from the White House Historical Association that are here today. Welcome to Southern California, and thank you for being here. Today it gives me great pleasure to serve as the host for the first ever unveiling of a White House Christmas ornament on the West Coast. That fact is very fitting, that our doing so today honors the presidency of Richard Nixon, who of course was born just steps from here in a house that his father built. Richard Nixon spent years living in the White House as president, and of course visited before the Nixon presidency during the Eisenhower years from 1953 to 61 as vice president. But Richard Nixon wrote in his memoirs about his first time visiting the White House, a time that he would never forget. He said, "Pat and I saw the inside of the White House for the first time on February 18th, 1947, when we attended a reception that the Trumans gave for the new members of the 80th Congress." Of course, he had recently been elected as a representative from California. Just as we remember Richard Nixon's presidency and contributions to the history of the White House today, we especially honor those of his beloved wife and partner, Pat. Pat Nixon was a first lady of many, many firsts, who rose from humble beginnings right here in Southern California to impact millions of people in our nation and around the world as she substantively changed the role of First Lady to include that of official U.S. representative and diplomat. She was voted one of the most admired women in America by Good Housekeeping magazine for 22 years, and for 14 years by the Gallup organization. But I think that rather than listen to me talking about Mrs. Nixon's lifetime of accomplishment, I'll turn it over to an expert. Jenny Eisenhower is Mrs. Nixon's eldest granddaughter, and she narrated this brief film that we will play now that I think will certainly do the job.
To be just a small part of this convention that's going to nominate Richard Nixon for another 4 years in the White House, with our gracious and lovely First Lady, Pat Nixon, by his side.
She is one of the most intriguing figures in American history, an accomplished and effective diplomat, an ideal and an inspiration.
I give you the First Lady of our land, the First Lady of our world, Patricia Ryan Nixon.
I think you were in high school when your mother died rather early, and then you had to take care of your father, and you were on your own. Did you kind of take care of the family?
I did. But it was a pleasure because we all worked together.
She rose from the humblest and harshest of beginnings to be voted one of the most admired women in the world for 22 years. She said, "People are my project," and she moved easily and eagerly among people who sensed her strength and felt her compassion. She reshaped and expanded the roles of both the second and first lady.
Mrs. Nixon was personally active, visiting hospitals and other institutions.
Mrs. Nixon enjoyed the park herself, even to the point of rolling in a few putts.
Pat Nixon truly experienced, embodied, and exemplified the American dream. Her story began in a cabin in the Copper Hills of Nevada, late on the night before St. Patrick's Day, March 16, 1912. She lost both her parents by 18 and went to work to pay the bills and keep her two brothers in school. She never let her hardships limit or define her. Independent and adventurous, in 1932, she answered an ad to drive an elderly couple across the country. They were surprised that Pat Ryan was a girl, but she got the job. She stayed in New York and took a radiology course at Columbia University. Returning to California, she enrolled at the University of Southern California.
While you were in high school, did you decide what you wanted to do when you went to college, what you wanted to become?
I hadn't decided exactly, except that I knew I wanted an education. I didn't want to marry early or try to go up without the education which I felt was necessary.
To pay for her schooling, she found work in a Los Angeles department store and as an extra in Hollywood films.
And I was offered part, but I decided not to drop out of school.
And in 1937, when only 1 in 10 women earned a 4-year degree, Pat Ryan graduated cum laude and with the equivalent of a master's degree. After graduation, she taught at Whittier High School, where she met a young lawyer named Richard Nixon. After World War II, the young couple settled down and began a family. Tricia was born in 1946 and Julie in 1948. When Dick ran for Congress from California's 12th district, Pat was an equal part and partner in the campaign, and the formidable Nixon team was forged. On their many travels, she excelled as an ambassador on behalf of the American people. She traveled to 81 countries and every state in the Union, sharing her genuine warmth, indomitable spirit, and her compassionate strength. She broke new ground as Second Lady. Wherever she went, she insisted that her schedule include meetings with real people in real places. Schools, orphanages, hospitals, village markets. In Panama, she even visited a leper colony.
Mrs. Nixon visited the Palo Seco Leprosarium, where she toured under the personal guidance of its director.
She continued this custom as First Lady. In 1970, she brought relief supplies to the devastated country of Peru.
It is a signal honor for me to receive this decoration from the government of Peru. I accept it for the people of the United States who are glad to lend a helping hand to their neighbors in distress.
Pat Nixon repeatedly broke the mold. She was the first First Lady to travel to Africa. There, and in South America, she became the first First Lady to serve as an official representative of the United States as she met the people and conferred with their leaders. She was the first First Lady to address another nation's parliament and the first to enter an active combat zone.
Mrs. Nixon took a helicopter ride 15 minutes out of Saigon to a war orphanage at Two Duck. On the ground, there were jeep loads of soldiers who rode shotgun cover for her. She brushed aside official briefings so she could have more time to see the troops.
When the President and First Lady visited China, millions around the world saw that remote and isolated communist country for the first time through Pat Nixon's eyes. Her attention to detail and respect for cultural tradition was noted and appreciated. From mastering basic Chinese phrases to choosing her now iconic red coat, signifying good luck and happiness. She was personally responsible for the Chinese gesture that captured the imagination of America, the gift of 2 giant pandas to the National Zoo in Washington. Closer to home, Pat Nixon actively encouraged women to run for public office. She supported the Equal Rights Amendment, lobbied her husband to appoint a woman to the Supreme Court, and was the first First Lady to wear pants in public. Pat Nixon truly made the White House the people's house. She was responsible for its being lighted at night, a tradition that continues to this day. She initiated rose garden tours and candlelight Christmas tours, and as part of the extensive White House renovations, which she oversaw,
Good afternoon and welcome to the beautiful new Blue Room of the White House.
Installed wheelchair ramps, pioneered special tours for the blind, and acquired more than 600 historic paintings, antiques, and furnishings, more than any First Lady before or since. She was the most public of figures, but she was intensely private, and only a lucky few knew her fun-loving spirit and her sly sense of humor.
Yes, I do, from time to time, have a good laugh over the fact that I'm supposed to be shy.
Her later years afforded Pat Nixon what she truly desired most, time with her family, including her 4 grandchildren, Jenny, Alex, Melanie, and Christopher. She passed away, surrounded by her family, in June of 1993. Pat Nixon was as accomplished as she was modest, as strong as she was warm. Although she spent nearly 50 years in the public eye, she never sought the attention that came with her positions or activities. Even if people didn't know her, they knew that they admired her.
Mrs. Nixon should not be underestimated.
When you think of Pat, her husband of 53 years said, I hope that you remember the sunshine of her smile. She would like that.
Really said it all. So in addition to spearheading the acquisition of more than 600 artifacts, the most of any presidential administration, you just heard about Mrs. Nixon's special fondness for Christmas time at the White House. So knowing that the White House Historical Association picks and chooses themes from each president and first lady's contributions to White House history, I think you'll be amused and excited that they've done so again here with the 2022 White House Christmas Ornament honoring the Nixons. I know that the wait is killing you, but before we unveil this beautiful new ornament, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Stewart McLaurin, president of the White House Historical Association in Washington, D.C., to talk a little bit about how his organization protects, preserves, and adds to White House history. Stewart.
Thank you, Jim, very much. It's quite an honor to be with you here and so many wonderful friends here in Southern California at the Nixon Library as a guest of the Nixon Foundation. And Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, Mr. President, it's quite an honor to be with you here this morning, too. I've had the privilege of meeting a few presidents of the United States, but never in the company of 5 at one time. This is quite something. And certainly never where they sat and listened to me talk, of all things. So many of you have been supporters of the White House Historical Association and the Nixon Foundation, and I want to thank you for your generosity and all that you do to open up history and share history with so many people around the world. Many who are watching today on social media, online, and we even have a group back at our headquarters at historic Decatur House on Lafayette Square, just north of the White House. So hello to everyone watching at home. Dr. Kavanaugh, it's wonderful to see you and your extraordinary wife, Esther, who are good friends of ours, and I know that this foundation is extremely grateful for the leadership that you give and have given and continue to give to this extraordinary and important work. I had the privilege of touring the museum just before I came in. I'd been here many years ago and seen the previous one, and this one is certainly incredibly special and really tells the great and full story of President and Mrs. Nixon and their life, their leadership, and their extraordinary legacy. Chris, it's great to see you. And Sandy, who I've known for many, many years, and his extraordinary work here at the museum and the foundation. Ambassador Vasquez, we've known each other for quite some time. Jeremy Bernard, former White House Social Secretary. We had the opportunity to work together when he was at the White House working for President and Mrs. Obama. And it's really great to see you here today as well. I have several colleagues who are here with me from Washington, and I think they're scattered about, but I hope you have the opportunity to meet them as well. And Jim, in addition to his distinguished role as president and CEO of the Nixon Foundation, he has also been named recently to be one of our next-gen leaders, the younger leaders in our country representing all fields who will help take our message of White House history and share that openly and widely across the country, not just the stories of any one particular president, but all of them and how they lived and worked in that house that today we call the White House. We have another member, Roy Stickerson is another member of our Young Leaders Council who's here today. And so together they will be working with about 60 of their peers to share this history nationwide. And we're very grateful for that, Jim. Appreciate your leadership in that regard. Well, before I hold up any longer the moment that we're all here to reveal and celebrate, I want to tell you a bit about how we got here. The White House Historical Association was founded 61 years ago in 1961 by First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy. Now recall, she's 32 years old when her husband becomes President of the United States. Because of his tragic assassination, she is First Lady for less than 3 years. But what she put in place as First Lady of the United States, the creation of the nonpartisan, nonprofit White House Historical Association, an advisory board of great museum leaders and historic home leaders to advise the president. She hired the first curator that the White House has ever had to actually take care of the art and the objects in the White House collection. All of that she put in place at such a young age and in such a short period of time is still the process and the procedures which manages historic preservation, conservation, and the curatorial work at the White House today, an absolutely historic legacy. And we are part of her living legacy. When you go into these beautiful state rooms, the state floor and the ground floor, the historic rooms upstairs, the Lincoln bedroom, the Queen's bedroom, all that you see, decorative arts, furnishings, draperies, rugs, is acquired by, conserved by, taken care of by private funds. The government doesn't do that. The White House Historical Association does that with non-taxpayer funding from friends like you, and we are honored and privileged to do that on behalf of the American people. Well, Mrs. Kennedy gets the credit for raising the curtain on what we now know today is this extraordinary museum standard that we see in the White House, the very best of America for the world to see. You see, the White House is not just the home to the president and his family. It's the office to the president and his staff. It's the ceremonial stage upon which our nation welcomes its most important visitors and attends the extraordinary state dinners like Jeremy prepared for the Obamas. But it's also a museum where, in non-COVID times, 500,000 to 600,000 people a year from all over the world have an opportunity to walk through those incredibly special rooms. So Mrs. Kennedy gets the credit for raising that curtain that we still benefit from today. But it was Mrs. Nixon, as this film illustrates so well, who acquired more for the White House collection than any First Lady prior to her or since her. She did that with the help and support of the White House Historical Association on behalf of the American people. Mrs. Kennedy famously said, "The White House belongs to the American people. It's only in the temporary custody of any particular president and First Lady who happen to live there." So today, what are we here to do? We're here to unveil a Christmas ornament. And why a Christmas ornament? Well, thank goodness, in 1981, another First Lady, Nancy Reagan, was approached with the idea to create a White House Christmas ornament. Now, I often joke, if I had been in the room at that time, I would have probably said, sure, fine, do a Christmas ornament, that's great. But thank goodness she did, because that ornament over the years, over the past 42 years, has been the bread and butter support that allows us to undertake the work that Mrs. Kennedy began and that Mrs. Nixon engaged in so fruitfully and passionately. And it is the proceeds from those ornaments. We now, of course, have traditional philanthropy, and we're very grateful for your support in that regard. But it was these ornaments that are made by a veteran-founded small business in Rhode Island. These are not made in some country overseas and brought in. It's the hands of Americans that actually craft and make these ornaments that tell a story. Well, not only did she begin the program, Mrs. Reagan had another idea that I'm very grateful for, and that was to tell the story of the presidencies sequentially. So I don't have to sit around every year and think about what president are we going to focus on this year or not. Keeps me out of trouble. So we started with George Washington, Mr. President, and we are now up to Richard Nixon. And we've paused a few years along the way to honor a key White House anniversary like the 200th anniversary of the White House in the year 2000. So we use these to tell the story of a presidency. But how do we do that? We don't go to something that is known or from the headlines or that is popular or unpopular about a particular presidency. We want something that's going to intrigue a student, a family, someone who's giving these gifts or may have given them his gifts for years and years and years. So we find a unique and special story about that presidency that piques the interest, may cause them to buy this ornament, and as they open the box, in addition to the ornament is this wonderful booklet of history that our historians have put together that tell the full story of that presidency. Now, I'm embarrassed to say, and Jim, we know this well, that history is not well taught across our country, if it's taught at all. And there's an extraordinary ignorance of American history in schools, in homes, and that's very sad. So thank goodness there are extraordinary presidential sites like the foundations that Jim and the board here represents and that you support, the presidential libraries that are part of the National Archive system, and others. There are about 200 sites across the country, childhood homes, birthplaces, museums, libraries. And I encourage you, anytime you take a family trip, look on the map to see what's along that path and visit these, because your life will be enriched and it'll help you learn more about this history of our presidents and the historic house they call the White House. 46 presidents of the United States, and there's only one thing they have in common. They all lived in that little White House that George Washington selected the plot of land for and hired the young Irish architect. Now, President Washington was the only president who didn't live there, but his fingerprints are all over the place still today. So it is your house. It's the people's house. And today we're going to reveal the ornament for 2022. And the story is this. In 1969, First Lady Patricia Nixon began a custom and a tradition that exists in the White House to this very day. She began the creation of the very first gingerbread house that was among the White House Christmas decorations. There are three iconic elements every year in the Christmas decorations, and every First Lady, you see it on the news. What are the Christmas decorations like this year? And you love them, or you hate them, or you like this First Lady, or you don't. But there are three iconic elements. There's the Blue Room Christmas tree, which the chandelier is taken down, and this Christmas tree is placed in the middle of the Blue Room. It's 18.5 feet tall, and that is the iconic centerpiece. On the west end of the building is the state dining room, and on a pier table at the north end is the gingerbread house. Kids come through on Christmas tours, and they're eager and anxious to see the gingerbread house. And it has evolved over the years to be quite something. But it was Mrs. Nixon who began that tradition. And then the third element is the historic creche that is in the East Room of the White House. So without any other boring commentary from me, I'm excited to reveal with Jim and others, I think, the 2022 White House Christmas Ornament.
Thank you, Stewart. And I want to invite Chris Cox to join us. And ladies and gentlemen, if you would please join me in welcoming 5 presidents of the United States: George Washington, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, and Franklin D. Roosevelt. Please, ladies and gentlemen. All right, line up over here. None of you step out. Stewart, if you want to step out there with them. Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, if you will join me in counting down from 5. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
On the rooftops, ice on the sill, kids dragging their sleds up Ellington Hill. Sooner or later they come in from the cold for that Christmas tradition that never grows old. It's a gingerbread Gingerbread, gingerbread, building a gingerbread house. Gingerbread, 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 building a gingerbread house.
It's a beautiful ornament, ladies and gentlemen, and you can purchase it right here in the Nixon Library's gift shop or online at store.nixonfoundation.org. So I'd invite you all to visit our gift shop before you leave. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your time here today, and happy President's Day.
We'll build the walls, wait, he wants to spread the icing now, and she calls out, I had it first, and he said that's not fair, and now he's starting to cry, little tears of despair. So gingerbread, 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 building a gingerbread house. Gingerbread, 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 building a gingerbread house. Do, 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 do. Mama storms in with her hands on her hips. All this jabberwocky poppycock is giving me fits. If you just love each other more than yourselves, you'd have more fun and your mama won't yell at you. Gingerbread, 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 building a gingerbread house. Gingerbread, gingerbread, ooh, gingerbread, building a gingerbread house.